Today we are gathered to discuss a very pressing issue, not just for our Asian community, but for our country. The U.S. is the breadbasket of the world, thanks largely to family farms. Unfortunately, the farming and agricultural workforce is aging and nearing retirement, and fewer young people are looking to take over their families' farms or enter the agriculture industry. With more farmers leaving the field and not having someone to pass their land and legacy on to, we face significant challenges to agricultural production, rural community sustainability, and U.S. food security. Here's why this matters. U.S. food security is national security. American farmers are the nation's oldest workforce, averaging 58 years. 1/3 of farmers and ranchers are over the age of 65. In my home state of Florida, that number is even higher, accounting for roughly 40% of all farmers. This group of aging farmers owns over 40% of U.S. farmland. And with more farmers retiring and fewer children looking to take over farms for their families, these farms and their legacies are at risk. The U.S. has lost more than 200,000 farms since 2007. That's 40 million acres of land being repurposed for commercial, residential, or industrial development, and 40 million acres of land that are no longer producing food and agricultural products in and for the United States. There are many factors that contribute to this loss. Most farmers aren't looking to sell land to a developer. They'd prefer to keep their family farm functional and to pass their hard-tilled land on to someone who can continue their legacy and service to the community. But more and more young people are turning away from their jobs in farming and agriculture, due largely to the increased cost of farming, which is especially difficult for small farmers and those just starting out. This next generation of farmers are facing increased regulatory burdens and operating costs. The national price for farmland has increased over 7% in 3 years, averaging $4,000 an acre. Over 80% of farmers work a second job. Farmers face many challenges, from natural disasters to inflation. Rising input costs, especially high energy costs, make continuing in the family business less attractive to younger generations. This is also true when accounting for death, property, and inheritance taxes that can make taking over a family farm overwhelming. New farmers face even steeper obstacles, including access to land. As older farmers retire, foreign and adversarial entities like Communist China look to gain a stronger toehold in the U.S. agriculture sector by buying their land. At this point, China owns more than 350,000 acres of farmland across 27 states. That is not an acceptable threat. American farmers also must deal with unfair trade practices, undercutting their product on an international level. Congress has not always done right by our farmers. The major legislative package aimed at supporting farmers and agricultural workers, the Farm Bill, hasn't passed since 2018. This is especially harmful for farmers who have suffered with rising prices for the last 4 years under the last administration. While President Trump is having success in bringing down prices and fighting to support American farmers, he needs Congress to act as well, and passing a good Farm Bill is the right place to start. Otherwise, we will continue to use outdated information, which compounds the harm done by other economic and regulatory factors. As a result, the burden increases on our aging farmers who want nothing more than to see their farm continue in trustworthy hands, but are finding it harder and harder to find someone to carry on their legacy. The aging farm workforce and the loss of family farms presents a critical challenge to the sustainability of American agriculture. During this hearing, I hope to hear from our witnesses how we can better protect the heritage of our aging farmers and better secure the handover of farms to the next generation. We owe it to our retiring farm workforce to ensure the legacy can be continued while ensuring our food supply and shoring up the security of our nation. Now I'd like to recognize Ranking Member Gillibrand for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we all know, our farm workforce is aging. On average, our nation's farmers are older now than they were when the last census of agriculture was conducted in 2017. Because of financial stress, many farmers who would otherwise retire have had to keep on working. Some farmers have faced pressure to sell their farms to other owners if their family doesn't want to continue operations. Meanwhile, a lack of training and rural amenities like broadband and childcare have made farming less appealing to younger families. Our farmers provide an accessible and abundant supply of food to our whole nation. But with increased consolidation and more farmlands being converted to non-agricultural uses, we are sending ourselves down a very risky path. Our duty in Congress should be to support our farmers whatever way we can. With a changing climate, rising prices, volatile markets, our farmers are facing many challenges that make success even harder. One of the most important things we can do to pass a robust and bipartisan farm bill that addresses the needs of the agricultural community as well as the nutrition and conservation needs, to encourage a younger generation to returning to farming, we must invest in our rural communities. New and beginning farmers and young people who are returning to their family farm do not only consider the income that is tied to farming, they need to be able to access broadband and childcare and health care. We need to make sure that there is enough mental health support at a time when we see more farmers dying by succumbing to suicide. I have to say that the anxiety and stress caused by the fluctuating tariffs that we are currently seeing hasn't helped. Our farmers need consistent policy to make long-term planting and investment decisions. They need reliability from Congress in an unpredictable profession. Approximately 20% of our agriculture is exported, and farmers rely on those markets to make a profit. I look forward to a positive and productive conversation today to discuss ways we can support our aging farmers while making sure new and beginning farmers continue to enter the farm workforce. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member Gillibrand. I'd now like to welcome our witnesses here today, all of whom bring important perspectives on the challenges facing the aging workforce that we see in American agriculture. First, I'm proud to welcome someone who spent his life fighting for our farmers, Mr. Zippy Duval, President of the American Farm Bureau Federation. Mr. Duval is not only a national leader in agriculture, he's also a third-generation farmer from Georgia who understands firsthand the pressures our family farms are facing. He knows what it means to work the land, raise a family in agriculture, and build something to pass on to the next generation. Mr. Duval, thank you for being here. Thank you for your service to our nation's farmers and ranchers. You may begin your testimony.
Well, thank you, Chairman Scott, and thank you, Ranking Member Gillibrand. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to testify here today in front of you and your committee. I am Zippy Duval, and I am a third-generation Georgia farmer, and I am president of American Farm Bureau, who represents farm families from all 50 states and Puerto Rico. And I'm fortunate to have followed my father and my grandfather in their footsteps on our family farm. Today, my son, who is a veterinarian, to help support his habit of farming. We operate a beef cow farm. We raise broilers there on our farm, and we also have spent our lifetime restoring the land that has been in our family for over 90 years. As I travel the country and see farms across our great country, I see a lot of gray hair, and while the wisdom of older generations is critical, we must ensure that we make a way for young and beginning farmers to fill our boots. As this committee has identified, there are many challenges facing the agriculture communities, but there's also opportunities for Congress to support young and beginning farmers, including starting with a new farm bill. As I shared with the Senate Agriculture Committee earlier this year, we need a modernized 5-year farm bill. Farmers and ranchers have faced unprecedented volatility since 2018 farm bill was put into place, making it harder for many of our farmers to hold on. The 2022 census showed a loss of over 141,000 farms in 5 years. That's an average of 77 farms per day that we've lost. With rising interest rates, higher energy prices, supply costs that has gone unchecked, farmers will plant the most expensive crop ever planted this year. And many have faced a tough decision of whether or not to even plant that crop. This is why the Farm Bill and Title I safety net is so critical. Despite skyrocketing costs, the 2024 payments to farmers are projected to be the lowest since 1982. Additionally, farm debt is expected to increase in 2025 to more than $560 billion. Our members support streamlining farm loan programs to meet the evolving needs of farmers and ranchers and to make agriculture more accessible to young and beginning farmers. We are proud of Secretary Rollins for establishing a small family farm policy agenda, and it highlights the need to reform loan programs to streamline the delivery and increase the program efficiency. Adding to the uncertainty that farmers and ranchers and many other small businesses are facing is the possibility of the largest tax increase in American history. One provision that is critical to keeping family farms going is, to the next generation is the increase of estate tax exemption. If the exemption level reverts backwards, many families will risk losing their farm. Farm Bureau was pleased to see the progress made with the House passage of the reconciliation package, and we urge the Senate to join to ensure America's farmers and ranchers can continue to provide food, fuel, fiber that our country needs. Of course, we cannot paint the full picture on this issue without talking about our employees. Many of those employees are like family to us, and they are aging right alongside of us. That's a problem because most Americans, they aren't interested in working on our farms anymore, and they're not interested in coming back to the farm, despite the big investments that we're making in recruiting people to come back to the farm. Congress needs to recognize that farm workers as an essential to feeding and fueling our country. It's time to modernize our outdated system, and only Congress can meaningfully do that. Our country, a country that cannot feed its people is not a secure country. In order to meet the growing demand of food, fiber, and renewable fuel at home and abroad, we must ensure the continued strength of our farms and ranches in our communities. I want to thank the chairman for holding this hearing today, and I look forward to working with you to support the next generation of farmers, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Thank you, Mr. Duval. Next, we're pleased to welcome Jim Alderman, owner of Alderman Farms in Palm Beach County, Florida. Mr. Alderman has been farming since 1979, growing a wide variety of organic vegetables and managing a cow-calf operation. He was recently named the 2025 Florida Farm Bureau Farmer of the Year, a well-deserved honor that reflects his decades of dedication to agriculture. He's also been a strong advocate for Florida farmers, speaking out on key issues like trade and labor, and serving on multiple advisory committees to help shape agriculture policy. Mr. Alderman, thank you for being here today, and you may begin your testimony.
Good afternoon. I am Jim Alderman, Alderman Farms in 1979. We farm about 1,200 acres in eastern Palm Beach County. We're a very diversified farming operation.
Can you make sure you turn your, Mr. Alderman, can you turn your mic on?
Sorry.
It's on there.
It's on. Can we start over? Where am I at? Okay, again, my name is Jim Alderman. I began farming Alderman Farms in 1979. We farm approximately 1,200 acres in eastern Palm Beach County. We're a diversified farming operation growing mixed organic vegetables and particularly vine-ripe tomatoes. We grow the finest vine-ripe tomato in this country. Trust me. South Florida has a very unique climate which allows us to produce vegetables during the winter months, but it also brings unique challenges: hurricanes, invasive pests, development pressure, and rising input costs. You learn to adapt, and you also learn that it's not a sprint, it's a lifelong commitment. At the age of 78 years old, I've spent almost 4.5 decades working the land. I still wake up before sunrise most days like my peers. I'm still going strong because there's more work to be done. According to the committee's report, the average farmer is now 58 years old in Florida. Nearly 40% of our producers are 65 or older. We're proud of our experience and knowledge, but the question I ask is who is coming behind us? That's the part that keeps me up at night. It's just not growing the crops, it's passing down the knowledge, discipline, and the way of life. But that chain of succession is breaking. Nationwide, less than 9% of farmers are under 35 years of age. And then the numbers are even more sobering in states like mine. Young people want to farm, but they're running into walls, such as expensive land cost, expensive equipment cost. The cost of financing is very difficult. The big question is, why are farming selling out without young men and women stepping in? The incentive to make a profit is not there. We may ask, why can't they make a profit? The first reason comes to me is that the imports are being shipped into this country below our production cost. If a farmer cannot make money, he's not going to expand his operation. If his opportunity to sell land, which is farmed for years, comes, sometimes the opportunity is too great, they sell, retire, and then development comes, parking lots, residential communities, and no agriculture. How can we help farmers make it so we can be competitive with our neighbors to the north and our south? We have to be on the same level playing field. Another problem farmers have is the invasion of invasive insects and diseases that have entered our country from other countries. For example, we've seen the citrus industry with citrus greening has devastated the citrus industry. We've gone from 240 million boxes of oranges in production to around 40 million boxes today, all because of an insect that came in with bacteria that causes citrus greening. I think that it would help our country if we had a better inspections at our ports of entry to combat the invasion of insects and diseases that come from other countries. One of the other problems we have is that we're being overregulated. Food safety is of primary concern for Alderman Farms. We're very careful to make sure that we have the safest produce coming from our farm. Presently, we have several food safety inspections. It would be great so that we could only have one that would serve for all the different inspections that are required. Again, farmers must make a profit. They must make money to continue their operation, or they will take the easy way out, sell their property, and retire. Free and equal trade between our neighboring countries is a must, and as you know, labor is a major problem in agriculture. We are now dependent on H-2A labor from Mexico because we cannot get enough domestic labor to harvest our crops. Agricultural labor reform is a must. If we want to sustain agriculture in America, we need to smooth the path between generations, which means investing in beginner farmers programs, expanding technical assistance, and offering incentives like estate planning support, and make it easier to transfer farms without losing the land or the legacy. These aren't just policy tweaks, they are steps in our food system to prevent eroding one generation at a time. So I come before you today, not just as a farmer, but someone who cares deeply about the future of our country's food supply. We need strong bipartisan action to support aging farmers, invest in new generations, and keep American agriculture alive and well for decades to come. Thank you for recognizing the urgency of this problem, and thank you for allowing farmers like me to have a voice.
Thank you, Mr. Alderson.
I'd be glad to take any questions at any time from anybody.
Perfect. Our next witness brings a critical perspective from the private sector, someone who has spent his career helping agricultural businesses find the talent and leadership they need to succeed. Mr. Aaron Locker is Managing Director at Kincannon & Reed, the largest executive search firm in the world focused exclusively on food and agriculture. He also knows this issue personally. He grew up on a small family farm in Ohio, and he spent more than 3 decades working across the ag industry. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your work, and we look forward to hearing your insights.
Afternoon, Mr. Scott, Ranking Member Gillibrand, and members of the committee. Thanks for the opportunity to testify before you today. As Mr. Chairman Scott pointed out, my name's Aaron Locker, and I grew up on a small farm in Ohio and spent the last 36 years working in agriculture, from food production to executive leadership. Today, I serve as Managing Director at Kincannon & Reed. We are the largest executive search firm focused exclusively on identifying and recruiting leadership for organizations across the food and agriculture industries, the organizations that feed the world. For more than 40 years, we've helped ag organizations find and develop talent, and right now, that leadership pipeline is under serious strain. In 2025, more people will turn 65 than in any year in history. For every potential leader aged 35 to 50, 2 are preparing to retire. In agriculture, where many senior leaders have been in place for decades, this creates an acute succession challenge. And the next generation of leaders, especially those with agricultural backgrounds, is smaller than ever. This is not a coincidence. The 1980s farm crisis didn't just hurt balance sheets. It changed the interest in being involved in agriculture. The farm crisis didn't just hurt those in production, but the ripple effect was across the industry. Between 1980 and 1990, while college enrollment went up 7% nationwide, enrollment in land-grant university colleges of agriculture like Texas A&M, Nebraska, Minnesota, Penn State, and Iowa State, to name a few, dropped by nearly 37%. That gap is being realized today in boardrooms, field offices, and agronomy teams. Meanwhile, the complexity of agriculture is growing. Precision and decision ag technologies, automation, AI on the farm, and sustainability initiatives, they're moving fast. But fewer than 1/3 of ag companies that we work with have formal succession plans. That's not just a statistic, that's a systemic risk. Job growth in agriculture is steady, around 3% per year. But tech and finance are growing 3 times faster. So we're not just competing for talent, we are competing for leadership. And that matters because, as you mentioned, Chairman Scott, food security is national security. Attracting and retaining the next generation also depends on profitability and predictability. When farmers and agribusinesses face constant regulatory uncertainty or rising compliance costs, it discourages investment and makes leadership succession harder. To keep agriculture strong, we must reduce unnecessary regulatory burdens and ensure producers and those across the industry see a future worth building toward. This is not a challenge the private agribusiness sector can solve alone. Congress does have a vital role to play, and I respectfully offer 4 recommendations. First, pass a strong, fully funded farm bill. It provides stability for farmers, ranchers, and rural communities. Second, promote agriculture as a mission-driven, modern career path. No other sector blends health, nutrition, energy, and technology like agriculture. We have built the safest, most abundant food supply in the world, but that system will not sustain itself without the people who lead it. Young people and career changers need to see ag as a place to lead and innovate. Third, invest in leadership development. Support USDA scholarships, executive fellowships, and training through land-grant universities and ag nonprofits. And fourth, strengthen rural workforce development. That means apprenticeships, veteran transitions, and community college ag programs. And it means building career paths from urban and suburban areas into agriculture. In closing, the food and agriculture industries are evolving fast, but our leadership pipeline is not keeping up. This is not just a workforce issue, it's a threat to our most essential system, our food supply. If we want a strong, sustainable agricultural future, we must invest in people. We must identify and support leaders early, and we must give them room to grow. Thank you for your time and for your focus on this issue, and I too look forward to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Locker. Now I'd like to recognize Ranking Member Gillibrand to introduce her witness.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. I'd like to introduce Dr. Chris Wolf. Dr. Wolf is the E.V. Baker Professor of Agriculture Economics at Cornell University's Charles H. Dyson School of Applied Economics and Management and the Director of Land Grant Affairs. Dr. Wolf conducts research, extension, and teaching focusing on dairy products and policy, business management, risk management, and farm animal welfare. He also works with farmers to conduct research in order to identify how public policy impacts farm behavior and financial outcomes with the intent of improving decision-making for policymakers and industry professionals. You may begin.
Thank you. Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Gillibrand, and members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to be part of this hearing. As Senator Gillibrand said, I currently serve as the E.V. Baker Professor of Agricultural Economics at Cornell University, where I'm jointly in the S.C. Johnson College of Business and the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. I have a three-way split, research, extension, and teaching. I've been at Cornell since 2019, and mostly I do work on dairy policy, farm business management. I've taught farm business management and ag finance for the last 25 years at the universities. I also serve as the faculty director of the New York FarmNet program. In my home state of New York, which is currently the 5th largest producer of milk, we're in the midst of $2.5 billion in new private sector investment in dairy manufacturing. To enable this growth, Cornell is focused on helping to ensure our family farms thrive, bringing the next generation back to the farm, increasing production in a sustainable way, and training both college-bound and non-college-bound students for dairy careers. There are a number of explanations for the increased U.S. farm age. One is that there's a larger share of commercial farms that are multi-generational in nature. Rather than the kids operating separate farms like they would have done maybe when I was kind of thinking about going back to the farm, they return to the operation and become owners, which enables economies of size in production and management. In this case, the management team might have a younger average age that is masked by considering only the primary operator. Modern agricultural production also tends to be quite capital intensive, and that capital accumulation occurs over the manager's lifetime, the result being that the average farm age is getting older. Finally, given the USDA definition of a farm as any place with $1,000 or more of agricultural products produced and sold or normally produced and sold during a year, there are a large percentage of farms which are operated as part-time businesses, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this also means that if someone retires to some rural acreage, they will be included as a farm and increased farm age. This is not meant to imply that there are no issues with farm viability related to increasing farmer age. These include hurdles that limit the entry of young people into farming and the need to facilitate the transfer of assets to the next generation while providing the resources necessary for the retirement of the older generation. Family-owned farms, which are 96% of U.S. farms, are closely held businesses. The farms tend to be of the size that meets the management constraints and the income needs of the family owner-operators. Because of the capital requirements, farm business assets are often the retirement plan for farmers. While these farmers hope to pass the business to the next generation, they also need to recover the equity value to fund their retirement. Attracting the next generation of farm business owner-managers means making the profession attractive in terms of income and rural amenities. Significant impediments to successful intergenerational transfer often relate to information gaps, and this is where land-grant extension programs can be a valuable partner. New York FarmNet is a program that was created in 1986 in response to the farm financial crisis. The program operates a toll-free number that responds to requests with a team of financial and mental health professionals to meet with farm families at no cost. Including mental health professionals was motivated by the alarming fact that farmers face much higher rates of depression and suicide than the general population. FarmNet receives about 700 calls a year, resulting in about 400 new cases being opened. The remaining calls are referred for technical, accounting, or legal assistance. Sources of financial stress that FarmNet sees include price uncertainty, labor costs and availability, capital costs, land access, and estate and succession planning. Family-related stressors include health issues, child care, elder care, and drug and alcohol abuse. Agriculture ranks among the most dangerous industries in the U.S., with machinery accidents and injuries being common. Healthcare issues include not just the cost, but also the availability and proximity. Farmers often report delaying or avoiding healthcare due to cost, distance, and time constraints. Many farmers are underinsured or uninsured, especially those who are self-employed and operate small family farms. Farm business succession is a major source of financial and family-related stress on farms. FarmNet and Cornell Cooperative Extension and land grants across the country offer educational workshops and materials on farm business succession and estate transfer. In 2024, FarmNet assisted farm businesses that represented over $13 million in revenue, 600 employees, keeping more than 180,000 acres active in farming. FarmNet's experience is that managers who participate in these programs for estate planning and farm business transfer are likely to engage with attorneys and accountants to complete successful intergenerational transfer. Applied research and extension land-grant programs like FarmNet can provide valuable assistance to help ensure successful farm business transitions in a healthy U.S. agricultural sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Worth. Now we'll open up for questions. Senator Tuberville.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having and holding this hearing. In addition to being on the Aging Committee, gentlemen, I'm also on the Ag Committee. Let me tell you, the state of agriculture economy, it's in dire straits. We're in trouble. We've lost 150,000 farms, 25,000 farmers just in the last 5 years. Producers have lost over $40 billion in net farm income since 2022, and the current agriculture trade deficit has grown to $49 billion. Despite, in my state of Alabama, producers making bumper crops, they can't even break even, much less make a profit, due to the low commodity prices, high input costs, interest rates, and inflation. We can't keep this up. Can't do it. The only way we're going to help our farmers survive is to extend President Trump's tax cuts, increase people are not entering farming. Mr. Duval and Mr. Alderman, this labor problem increases the need for reforms in H-2A programs. Can you two speak of the struggles of keeping up with that is over $16 an hour in my state of Alabama? That is double the minimum wage. Can y'all address that, please?
Yes, sir, I can.
Thank you.
It costs me $24 an hour for my H-2A labor, okay? Minimum wage in Florida, I think, is $12.50. I'm from Florida, and with the rates going up higher next year, they're talking about going it up another $1. We still have to pay for their housing. We'd like some relief, at least we could get the housing back from the people, the H-2A workers that we're bringing in. But we spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars every year just for housing for the labor. Plus, we have to bring them in here, pay for their visas, pay for their ride here, their ride back. They're great labor. They're good. Without them, we couldn't harvest our crop. But we can't compete with the cheap prices of tomatoes coming from Mexico against us. They undercut the price so cheap. We're talking, the tariff that we're talking about is not enough to make any difference. 20%, 17%, that's not enough to help it. They need a floor at least what our minimum growing cost is, and then put a tariff above that. But try to protect the Florida farmers that a few that are left. And it's not only just in Florida, because at first it was just Mexico was coming after Florida tomato farmers right after NAFTA. Well, 20 years later, they're growing pepper and squash and corn and beans and every vegetable we grow all the way up the East Coast, all the way to Jersey and past. They're going to be competing with all of them, Mexico, with all those products. And their labor is, I don't know, what are they paying, $10 a day, and we're paying $25 an hour? There's got to be some help with the balance of trade. We don't want the government to give us anything, but get us on a level playing field with Mexico and Canada.
Thank you. Mr. Duval, you want to add to that?
Yes, sir. First thing we need to do is for Congress to freeze the AWAR wage rate so that farmers don't have to take another increase, and give us time to work on this H-2A program so that we can make it a workable program for our employees and for the farmer there. The way we're going now with the wage rate going up, we're going to price ourselves out of farming. We're not going to be able to pay the wage rate and stay in the farming and provide those jobs. And it's got to be done. It's got to be done quickly. And then we got to work on creating an H-2A program, or a program that speaks to all of agriculture. All of agriculture is suffering for the lack of labor, and we need to have year-round workers that's not capped. We need to be able to control it, but we need to be able to fill those jobs, whether a small, medium, or large-sized farm, and we need to have those year-round workers in those areas like dairy and other places where the work never stops. And then, of course, the regulation that go along with those programs are just so burdensome. You heard him talk about the requirement of having housing, the liabilities that come along with that. and the difficulty it is for our farmers to continue to abide by all these regulations, because every regulation costs a lot of money to a farmer. And if we're going to continue to be able to compete with the world, we've got to be able to make sure that we have a workable program, bring reliable labor here so that we can get the job done. Why would a young farmer, how can a young farmer come back to the farm and bring his expertise that he learned in college, expand that farm without having a labor force to do it with? That's one of the biggest limiting factors we have. And that AWAR rate is set by a survey done through USDA that was created over 60 years ago to count employees, not to set a wage rate. The formula is totally unworkable, and we need to redo that formula and set a fair wage rate that encourages farmers to hire people and be able to still stay in business and treat those employees right.
Thank you, Senator Tuberville. Ranking Member Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Wolf, we've seen several different tariff levels imposed on various countries at various points on different goods in the last several months. This has impacted everything from feed cost, fertilizer, and machinery, increasing operation costs for a lot of our farmers who already work within very tight financial margins. In the North Country of New York State, many dairy farmers depend on Canadian feed and fertilizer for their operations. This has been a long-term and mutually beneficial relationship that we have had with Canada, and has benefited businesses on both sides of the border. Dr. Wolf, in your opinion, what possible outcomes can we expect to see if the United States continues to impose these tariffs, which may lead to both higher input prices and restricted access to export markets due to retaliatory tariffs?
Senator Gillibrand, U.S. agriculture is dependent on trade both for many inputs as well as for export markets for their outputs. So increasing tariffs and trade wars certainly not something that are going to benefit U.S. farmers. For example, farms are dependent on inputs from Canada for things like fertilizer, lumber, and metals. So maintaining that relationship it was better for the farmers, definitely there. The U.S. dairy industry, which is what I mostly work with, on average exports about 1 day a week of the milk production. And the most important outlets for U.S. dairy exports are Mexico, Canada, and China. So maintaining that relationship is critical for U.S. dairy. Without these exports, stocks would surge and milk prices would be depressed, and that would lead to more farm exits. And the U.S. dairy farms are efficient, and they can compete with anybody in a global market, and I think that's what they want to do, but we've got to be perceived as a reliable trade partner. And that same statement could be made for a whole bunch of different U.S. commodities, from beef and pork to corn and soybeans. In a broader sense, the uncertainty in the last few months, uncertainty tends to inhibit investment. When an outcomes and the probabilities of the outcomes are uncertain, that basically creates a positive option value to waiting on investment, which is what we've seen in the last few months a little bit. So we're waiting on investments at a lot of different levels, and removing that uncertainty, I think, would help make U.S. agriculture a better longer-term investment and encourage investment in that sense.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. Farming is one of the most stressful occupations due to its unpredictability of climate, market prices, and labor shortages. The rate of suicide among farmers is 2 to 5 times higher than the national average, and approximately 60% of rural Americans live in a designated mental health provider shortage area. I was proud to introduce the National Agriculture Crisis Hotline Act last Congress to establish a National Agricultural Crisis Hotline, while expanding and supporting the current work undertaken by the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network. Programs like the ones at Cornell's New York FarmNet and the American Farm Bureau's Federation Farm State of Mind program are both critical to resources to support our farmers in moments of crisis. President Duval and Dr. Wolf, how should Congress expand resources to help our farmers access the mental health assistance that they need? And how can we reduce the stigma surrounding mental health in the agricultural community to encourage our farmers and ranchers to reach out when they are in need before they are in a moment of crisis? Mr. Duval.
Yes, ma'am. I take that very seriously, because I remember when I was a dairying during my time of when I was back on the farm before I got this job and dairying every day. I lost my wife and 42 years. My son went to war in Iraq, and with all the pressures of the farm, I realized what those pressures do to a man. And us old farmers, we kind of crusty. We sit in the back room, think we're not supposed to talk about our feelings, but that's the worst thing we can do.
Yeah.
The stigma that goes along with it, the embarrassment that people think they experience is not really there. And really and truly, all they need to do is open up and talk. It's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay not to talk about it.
Right.
That's why we went and started our Farm State of Mind program. And we also joined up with Together All, which puts us in with a group of a peer-to-peer group that farmers can be talking to each other, and free counseling for farmers and ranchers all over the country to be able to be part of. To support what you brought up, Georgia Farm Bureau and Georgia Foundation for Agriculture and Georgia Rural Health did a study, and it was very sobering, the facts that 29% reported thinking about dying of suicide of Georgia farmers. And when you look at the younger generation, the first generation farmers, 49% of them first generation farmers had thought about dying of suicide at least once a month. Those are devastating figures. And we got to continue to work from Congress to make sure that we tear down these barriers that causes higher regulation, that causes pressure for farmers, find an answer to our labor problems that is workable for our farmers, and be able to work with them with an undocumented workforce. We in agriculture know that about 50% of the workers out there on the farm are undocumented. And those people are like family to these farmers. And we need a way to work through that situation that a broken system has created here in this country. So there are a lot of things that Congress can do, but being able to put them on a level playing field in trade, tear down regulation, help them find a workable workforce would go a long way. It's taking a lot of pressure off. Dr.
Wolf, do you want to answer?
Sure,
question?
thanks. So a couple different things I'd point out. One is that the big part of it, as Mr. Duval mentioned, is overcoming the stigma. And I think that education and awareness can go a long way towards overcoming the stigma. So maybe a series of public service announcements collaboratively with groups like maybe American Farm Bureau and other commodity groups could help provide more awareness. And then accessibility, as you mentioned, a toll-free number that they can call with trained counselors and resources would have a positive impact. And also, given the distance that many have, living in remote areas, having telemedicine in addition to the toll-free number with, again, counselors and resources that understand what's going on in these rural areas and with farmers would be very valuable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Justice.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much, and Ranking Member, thank you. Thank all you great senators, and especially Coach Tuberville. You know, he and I are buddies, and we're both on the Ag Committee. And I want you to pay as close attention to me as you possibly can. Our family's been in the farming business for a long, long, long time. We got a real problem in agriculture. A real problem. And it is so serious, it's off the chart. You know, just think about it. Not only do we have a real problem, we're getting old. And as we get older and everything, the problem gets more and more critical. Now just stay with me just 1 second. If I were to tell you just this, America is the greatest country on the planet a millionfold. And with that, we have the greatest people, the most loving people, the very, very best of the best. But we're spoiled rotten. Any way you cut it, we are spoiled rotten on food. Absolutely, we're taking advantage of our small family farms beyond belief. You talk about taking for granted somebody and what they're doing with their work. That's what we do every day. And we won't address the problem. The problem is really simple. If we don't do something about this, we're going to have a crisis at some point in time like you can't imagine. Now, it may be a ways away, but for God's sakes a living, we surely to goodness deserve to have a farm bill. You know, but with all that said, you think about depression and suicide, and I could ask you a bunch of questions, but I'm just going to talk, okay? And here's the deal. I mean, you just think about the average size small family farm in America. The average size is about 430 acres. Now, if we could use 500 just for a second, and we could just think of these gentlemen that are right here, and just think, what could they sell their farms for? If they had a 500-acre farm, and many of them have a whole lot bigger than that, but if they had a 500-acre farm and it was worth, pick a number, I don't care, $15,000 an acre, $10,000 an acre. Their net worth after they throw away, they take care of some debt is so substantial they could give the money to Goldman Sachs, never touch the principals, go to somewhere and live, and honest to God, make 10 times what they're making on the farm. Now, just think about this. What if at some point in time in life, some giant corporation, or God forbid a foreign country, ends up owning a tremendous amount of our farmland in America? Then think about just this. What if they just, all of a sudden, they farmed one crop, put it in ungodly amounts of storage, and said, the price on that corn is $200 a bushel. And if you don't want to pay that, we're not selling it. And we're not going to plant again. And at that point in time, we spin in a crisis like you can't fathom. Now, if you want a mile-long food in the grocery stores and paying 14% or whatever it is of your annual income towards food, quit taking advantage of these people. Quit taking them for granted. We're going as a government, we got smart people here that can figure out what to do, but we just don't put any passion and emphasis on it. We don't. Now, I've done this over and over and over and over, and I've said this forevermore. The point in time when we, as a government, we, as our people, put real passion and emphasis and importance on this, we'll solve it. If we don't solve it, it's going to bite us, and it will not be pretty. So with all that being said, like I said, I could ask you a bunch of questions. There's no point in me doing that. I've been on this same rant a bunch of times because I'm on the Ag Committee too, and I'm telling you that I can see it coming. This is like being in a bubble. This is what they're doing. They're like in a bubble right now, and they're screaming. They're screaming they got a problem. They got a real crisis. We don't have young people going into farming today. Why would they? I mean, they're not nuts. Why would they? Everybody's screaming in the bubble, and we don't hear them. And we best better hear them, America. Mr. Chairman, I'm done. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Justice. And a warning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for organizing this hearing. I want to recognize all of our panelists, but especially a great Georgian in the room, my friend, Mr. Zippy Duval. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your voice on so many of these important issues, for being a voice for farmers all across Georgia and all across our country, and for your lifetime of service. As you know too well, in recent years, it seems like Georgia farmers have been hit by one thing after another after another. It's a tough business, and there's so many things that you can't control, like the weather. But in addition to that, rising input costs. And in addition to rising input costs and these weather events that we have seen in recent years that have created such a setback for farmers, on top of all of that, we're now dealing with pointless trade wars. And these trade wars will make it even harder to get their products to international markets. I've been honored to work with many of my colleagues across the aisle to help our farmers get their products to markets. And now all of that is being disrupted in many ways. Mr. Duval, I've heard from Georgia farmers, particularly our older farmers, who are turning to drastic measures like selling off pieces of their family's farmland and taking out second mortgages just to stay afloat. Are you hearing similar things from your Farm Bureau members and friends in Georgia's farming community? And if so, what concerns you about this?
Yes, sir. All across America, I hear the same thing. And of course, farmers basically right now are supportive of this administration and their effort to try to level the playing field. We're all praying it all works. Now, I will tell you, our Farm Bureau policy is that we don't support tariffs because we know we're always the blunt of the repercussions from coming from that. But we also know that our farmers have got to have that level playing field because a lot, 20% of our income comes from trade overseas, and they got to have it. So they're willing to wait. What worries me most, and what I see most, references what you just said. We are seeing farmers have to sell part of their land out to take another mortgage. When we get to this fall and we don't have solutions to the trade problems and the tariff problems, and everyone starts selling a very, very cheap commodity and can't pay for the expenses, the inputs that they bought to grow that commodity, and then they have to turn around the next month and go back to their banker and say, I'm ready to borrow my money to plant next year's crop, and he hadn't paid off last year's debt, we're going to be in serious, serious problem. Right. And you're going to see farmers and ranchers all over this country go through mental health issues like you've never seen before since we've seen in the 80s with high interest rates. And it's going to be very, very difficult.
And feeling, forced to sell their land, which has implications for all of us, but certainly you can't pass it on to the next generation. And since 2017, the average number of farmers over the age of 65 increased by 12%. Just since 2017. So that's one of the things that happens when farmers are forced to sell. Can you talk about some of the other consequences, both for the farmers and for us?
If they're forced to sell, that land comes out of production and never goes back into production. And there's so much competition now for land, it prevents young farmers and beginning farmers that want to go into agriculture, God help them, have a difficult time finding that land to do that. Availability of land, availability of money, loans, is one of the biggest stumbling blocks young farmers and beginning farmers have going into the business.
Access to credit. So all of these things. Would you say that the tariffs and the uncertainty that's been created around the tariffs has made it worse, tougher for even tougher in a tough business?
I think in the short term it has not really affected them yet, but when we get to this fall and they start selling their commodities, and if we don't have solutions to the tariff war, then we will have lost some markets that we have depended on for years, and then we'll start seeing the crisis hit.
Yeah, I think that's just the thing, the uncertainty.
Yes.
And you're having to make decisions within the context of uncertainty. The people you would sell to, they're having to make decisions all up and down, all across the trade zones, and which makes it very, very difficult to plan. So thank you for being a voice in this moment. It's my view that farmers are not helped by this increasing uncertainty, and we need to bring some sanity to this conversation about trade, which, by the way, Congress could do something about trade tomorrow if we decided to do it. It's within the wheelhouse of Congress. Thank you so very much for your testimony.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Tuberville.
I got one question. Mr. Locker, we'll start with you. All of you can answer if you want your thoughts on this. As long as I've been up here, I've been advocating to permanently repeal the federal estate tax, which is often called the death tax. I know it means a lot to farmers. So, Mr. Locker, we'll start with you. Your thoughts.
Well, Senator, I think obviously You look at modern agriculture today, I mean, it is a massive investment, even small farms. I mean, if you add up all of the assets. And so anytime that you want to pass that along to the next generation, comes at a significant cost and is in many cases cost prohibitive. And so, yeah, doing away with the death tax. And I think we get bottled in with other businesses, and it's couldn't be farther from the truth in terms of comparable. That when you're passing along a farm business, it comes with, like I said, a lot of cost, a lot of assets. It takes a lot to run a farm today, and so doing away with the death tax is the right thing to do, to be able to continue to pass it down to the next generation. Otherwise, it becomes cost prohibitive.
Mr. Duval, you got to.
It's absolutely one of the necessary things that we need to do. A farmer works all his life. I've spent my whole life buying back my farm. My daddy's had to sell part of it off. My whole life. And if we don't fix that problem, if we don't get rid of inheritance tax, other generations will have to sell the farm, and that farm will go out of production, and we will not enjoy the production from those farms. And it has to be done. It's just like people say, well, you got a lot of land, you got a lot of wealth. You have to have land to farm. It's just like having a tractor. It's just like having a car to go to work in every day, even if you're not farming. It's something you have to do that job. But show me a farmer that has a retirement plan. It's tied up in his land. It's tied up in his land. And when he retires, he's either got to sell his land or sell it to his children. And then if you pile inheritance tax on top of that, they have to sell part of the farm to be able to continue it. And it is one of the biggest devastating things that can happen to a family farm when you have a death and have to go through that difficult time.
Mr. Alderson?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's double taxation. It shouldn't be there. You've already paid the taxes once. Why are you going to just put somebody out of business or make them sell their business or their farm? It shouldn't be there. I agree with you. One other thing you might all think about, and this is not related to that, but somewhat. Years ago, and I'm not an accountant, not a CPA, I'm a farmer. We know a little bit of a lot of nothing, So some of the equipment I've been looking at, laser weeder, your AI stuff that's coming around, it's $1,400,000. I can't afford it. But what I'm wondering, years ago we had a rapid depreciation schedules where you could depreciate something real quickly and write it off quicker. Is that something that can be done? Maybe one of you professors know what it is now, but that would probably help some of the farmers out there to do some rapid depreciation on farm equipment.
Mr. Wolf, your thoughts on estate tax?
Yeah, well, so with the increasing size of commercial farms and with the average farmland value being $4,000, and there's a lot of places where the farmers would be real happy to be able to buy more land for $4,000 an acre. So that average is hiding a lot of much higher prices in some places. Certainly there's an increasing number of farms that are running up against the potential to lose some of the value in an estate tax. And as the other witnesses have said, you can't give up the land usually and still be a viable farm, right? This is not the same as, it's not liquid. If you sell it, it's gone. And so that highlights the need to do the farm business succession and estate planning. And if you don't do that, which is, it's pretty easy to forget that, and nobody likes to do, by the way, estate planning, right? It's not fun. We all need to do it, but that's kind of admitting that, you're going to have that at some point. So that's not fun to do. But certainly, it's different for farm businesses because they're small and medium-sized, family-owned, closely held businesses. So it's fundamentally different than other types of businesses.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Duval, Mr. Alderson, what has Mexico dumped any crops on farmers in the United States?
Yes, sir.
You got to put your mic on. You got your mic on?
Oh, it's on. Thank you.
Okay. Really? So how do they do that?
Well, can I give you a personal example that happened to me 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're selling grape tomatoes to a company in New York State, okay? And our FOB price is $16.50. We couldn't get the order, been selling them for quite a while. Couldn't get the order this week. He said, I can get them delivered from Mexico for $10. I can't pick them, pack them, and grow them for $10. I can't pick them and pack them for $10. So we couldn't take the order. I'm not going to lose money. I'd soon dump it rather than having to lose money. And we dump a lot of tomatoes. We can't sell them, we dump them. We don't have another market for them. It's not like corn or soybeans that you can keep and sell next month. If we don't have a market, it goes into the go feed the cows. So there's an example. We were at.
So why are your costs higher?
Why?
Yeah.
Labor, as I mentioned earlier. H-2A labor's costing me $24 an hour.
How did they come up with that?
Well, what do you call it, A-word?
Yeah.
A-word?
Adverse wage rate.
So the federal government did that to you?
Yes, sir.
Your friends at the federal government?
Am I friends of it?
No, your friends at the federal government did this to you?
Well, you guys are friends, so but you can do something about it. It's not fair because we have to pay the housing for them, okay? So it's $16.50 an hour, I think it is, going up to $17.
You have to pay their way to get here? You have to pay their way home?
Pay here, we have to pay their visas, feed them to get here. When they get here, we pay for their housing, and when they go home, we pay for their way home,
So
their housing, everything.
How did they come up with the $16.50 an hour?
You want me to answer that?
Yes.
There's the wage rate is set, the AWAR wage rate is set by a survey done by USDA that is 60 years old, that was created to count the number of employees on farms, not to set a wage rate. And if you go look at the calculations in that wage rate and what sectors that they use to calculate it, they even use the wage rate of H-2A workers to calculate it, which is, how do you do that? That doesn't even make sense. I've been all across this country. I've been in every state, out on farms, talking to farmers. I found 3 farmers that filled out that survey. So who's filling the survey out? Where's the data coming from? And why in the world would we set a wage rate based on a survey that's 60 years old and wasn't even designed to set a wage rate by?
May I suggest they go to Mexico and find out what the average rate that these men were making before they came over here to work for me or the other farmers that are bringing H-2A workers? And it's probably, what, $1 an hour?
Plus the inspections and regulation that this gentleman and a lot of our growers have to go through.
But they don't do that in Mexico?
That they don't do in Mexico.
Well,
You mean they'd sell it in our grocery stores without doing that?
Senator, one question I'd like to ask. Have you ever seen the FDA in Mexico?
Nope. So you're paying for things that they don't have to pay for in Mexico.
Exactly.
So do you think that our trade policy, we allow Mexico to dump tomatoes on Florida farmers, is fair?
No, sir.
All right.
I did have the opportunity to visit Mr. Greer at USTR, and he and I talked about the dumping. And it's not just tomatoes. It's cucumbers, it's bell peppers, it's cherries.
Blueberries, it's strawberries.
It's cherries from Turkey dumping on what's happened in Michigan. It's all over the country. And it's time for our country to stand up and say, no more. You're going to dump your produce on our farmers.
So do you think the Trump administration is doing the right thing by, what Commerce is doing with regard to eliminating the suspension agreement on tomatoes, what Jameson Greer is doing to try to raise the tariff rates on produce coming from other countries?
Sir, it's hard to find out what this tariff President Trump is talking about. First, it started at 20%, now it's 17%. But let me tell you what will work, okay? If you have a minimum, what would you call it?
Price minimum?
A base that you're at. Okay, find out what it costs to grow a box of tomatoes in South Florida. And I'm going to say it's between $12 and $14 a box. Put that base in there. They can't sell it any less than that. And then charge them a tariff above that. And 20% is not enough. It won't slow them down. If you take away the minimum, whatever they call it, they take that away. Now they can charge you $5 for a box of tomatoes and charge 17% tariff. It doesn't amount to anything. It's not going to slow them down a bit. If they had 100% tariff on them, maybe that would slow them down. But you find something, go to other countries and see what they do. Go down to simple one. Go down to the Bahamas and see if you try to ship a box of tomatoes to the Bahamas and what happens. You'll pay about $20 a box tariff on it. If there is a grower in there growing tomatoes in Freeport or in the Bahamas someplace. It's not a fair policy. We just like to be equal and fair so we're on the same level playing field.
Right. Senator Justice.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't have a whole lot to say. You know, I know these witnesses are superstars, and I congratulate you on all the honors and everything that you've been able to do in your lives. And I'd really be interested in how many folks are out here that are some way, somehow involved in agriculture, and I assume that most everybody. And I know this from the bottom of my heart, you know, that for those that are young, that live on the farm and grew up on the farm, you want to absolutely, in many situations, you want to stay there. You love it. You love it with all your soul. Every one of you love it with all your soul. You don't want to give up that way of life in any way, and you are providing a service for all of us off the chart. Why can't we get it? Why can't we really just get it to the fact that you've got somebody, you know, a guy told me a long time ago, he was the president of Stanford Seed Company at the time. His name was Jim Billings. And Jim Billings said, you know, they were bought out by another seed company a little bit bigger. And they were going to retain him and everything, and they asked him to write a job description. He said, I sat down and I started writing. And I wrote 13 pages of single-space stuff of what I did every day. And then I just laid my pencil down and thought, and then picked it back up and said, see, the right person's in the right job and they're motivated. That's you. That's all of us that are in agriculture today. We're a production engine like you can't imagine. You can't imagine how good we are at what we do. We're smart too. We got to solve this riddle. And it is complicated as it can possibly be. But you got smart people that love what they do, and they're motivated by what they do because of their love. We just got to solve the riddle. And to solve the riddle, I've never seen a situation in my life that you can solve it until you absolutely place a level of importance on it, a big time level of importance. We don't solve it, shame on us. That's all I can say. You know, and I've stood on the top of the mountain and screamed till I'm blue-green. You know, it's a real problem. Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Duval, how important is it to buy American products? Why is it important that we grow our food and put the food we put in our body grown in America rather than places like Mexico?
Well, we have absolutely no clue what conditions or techniques are used in Mexico to grow that food, and it is.
I mean, we don't test it, we don't measure it, we don't.
They inspect it coming across the border. They don't have enough inspectors to be able to do it correctly, and I think the federal government makes an attempt, but just like I said, when have you seen inspectors from America over in another country inspecting that food before it leaves those farms and comes to us, like they do at his farm each and every day? And it is important for us to realize, like in your opening statement, that food security is national security. If we all were old enough to remember the long gas lines when we had to sit in line to get gas and how it almost brought our country to the knees, if we all remember how scared we was when COVID hit and all of a sudden we saw some shelves at the grocery store empty, if you don't solve our labor problems and put profitability back in agriculture and young people not come back to it, we will live to see that day again in this country, and we'll be dependent on some other country, whether it's on our land or their land, to feed us. And we will not be a secure country at that
So if you're going to do three things that would impact the American farm, what would be the top three things?
Got to fix trade, got to fix labor, got to have a farm bill.
Okay. All right. Mr. Locker, from your position working with ag businesses, what trends are you seeing in terms of workforce aging, not just on farms, but within the companies that support ag?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I mean, we're seeing it across the board. I mean, first and foremost, the whole agribusiness community obviously is driven by the health of the farmer. And so by having a farming population that is profitable, predictable, that drives everybody. Now, we're coming off almost a 40-year period of pretty stable workforce coming off the farm. That, as I mentioned in my opening statement, is drying up. And it really doesn't, it's irrespective of whether it's crop inputs, ag machinery, retailers, cooperatives. All of them across the industry are facing the same thing. And because many of the executive leadership has been in place for 30, 40 years in agriculture. And so, what we're faced with is what happens when, and I saw a statistic not too long ago that up to half of the current executives across agribusiness could be retiring between now and 2035. And with that goes all that institutional knowledge, all the services, all the technology, all the things that we do to help the farmer produce, like I said, the largest and the safest food supply on the planet. All that institutional knowledge can go away. And so it's definitely an issue that we're facing. Now, we've done a lot of things recently working with companies on succession plans, on mentorships, and even an intuitive conversation I had the other day with a company that they're even looking, because of technology and AI, reduce mentorships. Actually pairing young people with the senior executive to help them understand the next generation of leaders and how you talk to them and how you get them attracted to agriculture, as well as technology. But I think so the trends are there, and what I would say, and Senator Justice, I couldn't say it any better. We need a stable farming community, which starts with the Farm Bill. Once we get that stabilized, then the investment comes back in, the investment in technology, the investment in the tools that the farmers need, because right now, much of that investment is being held up because of lack of predictability, lack of profitability at the farm. And so we need that stability. And then the other thing I would say to close with is we need a greater share of mind in the U.S. today about agriculture. We need to attract, a whole new generation of future leaders to agriculture, because by being able to say, look, agriculture, has transformed, and we're going through another technology transformation as we speak, like a lot of industries are with AI and on-farm automation. And so, the technology and the domain experience that we're going to need to attract to ag is going to be unparalleled over the next several years. So I think, by working with, Congress to say, yes, we've said it more than once today, food security is national security. Let's get a narrative out there that says, and because of that, we need to attract more people into the agriculture community now more than ever before.
Thank you. Dr. Wolf, from your research, what are the most significant financial barriers facing aging dairy farmers who are looking to retire or transition their operations to the next generation?
Senator Scott, the biggest problem is to be actively engaged in farming and be able to transfer or sell those assets at a fair value so that you can fund your retirement. Because again, these farmers, they don't have 401ks or 403bs, right? Their money is tied up in the farming assets, so they've got to make it work. And there are ways to do it, but it takes planning ahead of time, and it takes considering things like long-term leases and land contracts and things like that to make it work. And if you don't do that, then it becomes infeasible. And so tax policy is part of it, and there's some things that we have in the tax code that work now, and some things that you maybe are thinking about extending that could help. And again, a lot of it is just an information problem, and also, as Mr. Locker pointed out, I think correctly, we definitely see more people want to go into agriculture when it's profitable. right? If you grow up on a farm and and it looks like your parents are struggling, it's not something you're not gonna want to come back to. So that's definitely key.
Mr. Duval, you've talked to Jameson Greer, and I assume you've talked to Secretary Rollins. All right. So we're talking about trade policy. It takes two people to get a deal done, right? So do you think we're better off to just leave it as it is, or try to improve our trade policy to stop the dumping?
We have to try to improve our trade policy. What we've done in the past has not worked. We've not regained some of the markets that we lost in the trade war 8 years ago. So we need trade deals. We need access. We need certainty. And you give our farmers a level playing field, they'll compete with anybody on earth. And yes, of course, especially during harvest time of tomatoes and strawberries, they shouldn't be able to be allowed to dump here on top and just depress the price to the point that the farmer can't successfully run a business under all the rules and regulations that cost them tons of money to abide by in this country.
So what Secretary Rollins and Secretary Lutnick and Trade Rep Greer are trying to do, you think, as difficult as it is, it's worth trying to try to improve our trade policy with other countries?
That's what I hear our farmers say. Short term, they're willing to take the pain. Long term, we got to have solutions. They can't handle it a long period of time. When we go into this fall with this expensive crop that's in the ground and the cheap commodities that they're going to have to sell, it's really going to be difficult for our farms all across America.
So, Mr. Waller, when you talk about a farm bill, so what's in it that's important to you?
Renewed Title I with increase in reference prices, continued support for crop insurance, to be able to, if a farmer, small, medium, large, growing whatever he might grow, deserves to have a risk management tool that he participates in to be able to cover his risk that he's got in that crop. So it ought not be limited to certain commodities. It ought to be widespread to all commodities, all sizes of farms. And research and development dollars are so crucial. That's what keeps us on the cutting edge of agriculture. That's what keeps us the leading production place in the world, is the research and development dollars that are spent at great universities like Cornell and University of Georgia and University of Florida. And then of course our conservation programs. These lands that we accumulate, that we have to have to farm on, those natural resources and our neighbors, we all are entitled to having, protecting that. But farming doesn't allow the luxury of a farm to make enough money to do all that protection. So conservation programs, 140 million acres have been voluntarily put in conservation programs across America. That's the size of California and New York, because it was voluntary and the government participated in helping us protect those natural resources on the land. All of those programs, and even the trade part of the Farm Bill where we help sell our products overseas, all of those programs are so important to agriculture and the Farm Bill. That's why we've been kicking this can down the road 2 years, and the uncertainty is caught up with our farmers, it's caught up with our bankers, and it's going to catch up to the American people.
Mr. Alderman, you've been dealing with all the red tape of the federal and local governments and state governments. What would be your top 3 things that you'd want to change that would have a positive impact on your farm?
You mentioned crop insurance a minute ago, okay? Crop insurance needs to be analyzed to take in consideration specialty crops that we grow. I can lose a whole crop in South Florida with a hurricane, we did like in October, and have crop insurance and still don't qualify for getting paid. We take it out every year, but crop insurance was written out in the Midwest for Midwestern farmers, has no idea about vegetable farmers in South Florida, and we just never qualify for any of their, but we have to have it. That would help. I think some of the regulations that are coming down from the FDA right now, from some of my neighbors, It's really scary whether we'll be able to continue farming because of them. And if they're going to come inspect everything and every little thing that there's going to be, then maybe they should try to help us find out what the problem is and help solve the problem. Like coming in, I got you, now I'm going to put you in jail. It's really bad because this is America. It's supposed to be free, but we've got a government that years ago when I was a kid, government actually helped you. You had different agencies that help farmers do things, and they'd survey your land for you and get it level and do so many things for you. But today, all that's gone, but I guess there's some part of it still left. But the inspection part of it with what the FDA is doing is to one of my neighbors, my friends, and it's just last week, it's terrible. It's terrible. What other problems would I have? We just want a level playing field again. Just make it so that we're competitive with our neighbors to the south and to the north. Canada grows a lot of hothouse tomatoes that compete with us every day on the shelves in the grocery stores. We'd like to be, fair. If I don't want the government to subsidize anything I grow, but if we're competing with countries that are subsidizing their farmers, do something to make it a level playing field. And I'm not smart enough to figure out what that would be. You got some economists again, but put something on it so we're on a level playing field. Just get us equal.
So if you would tell somebody going to a grocery store that's buying produce, why would they buy an American product rather than a product from China or Mexico? Why should they do it?
Number one, we've got the food safety regulations that we have in every farm out here now. I hire a full-time person. That's all she does is food safety. She goes around with swabs, measuring stuff every day, sending them off to find out. Our food is safe here. The safest food in the world. I would not hesitate to, that's true. You don't know what you're getting from Mexico or Guatemala or any of these other countries. I've been to those countries and I see how they farm and what their safety protocols are, which they don't have any. So that would be the same, and it's fresher. If you buy my tomatoes, I picked it today and it's in the market tomorrow. It's not sitting in a cooler for 2 days, 3 weeks, or on a trailer coming from wherever, from Chile. It's picked here. It goes to the grocery store warehouse that evening, and it's in their store the next day. It's fresh. So
right now, your produce is inspected, and we allow people to send produce into our country without an inspection.
I don't think that's quite true. They do inspect the loads coming across the border, but they're not. It's not only the food safety part of it. It's what I mentioned earlier, the invasive insects and diseases. We get a new thrip coming into South Florida every 2 years, and then it takes us 3 or 4 years to figure out how to combat or take care of it. It's either thrips or pepper weevils or some new disease, a new virus coming in on tomatoes from another country. I don't know what the answer to it is. You can't stop shipping it into, we've got to have it, I guess. And it's not only vegetables. Those diseases and insects come in on plants, on flowers, and all that stuff comes into the port of Miami International Airport. They get a bad lot of it, and it goes to a junk man, and next thing you know, that insect takes over, and we're fighting it for the rest of our lives. You can't get rid of them.
So you've been doing this for 45 years?
Probably longer, closer to 50.
So do you like it? Why do you like it? Why do you like being a farmer?
I like growing things. I like to see things grow. We're talking about stress earlier. I wouldn't, I couldn't do anything else. I could have been a road builder, gone into construction in South Florida, you know how busy it is there, but I chose agriculture.
When you go out to the farm, is it great to be around the animals?
Well, I do have some animals, but tomatoes are not animals, but I love watching the crop grow. And, you know, I don't physically do the work anymore, but there's nothing on that farm I haven't done, from picking to everything there is. You know, I started with zero, and
I farm because I love my animals.
there.
I mean, he and I just had the greatest visit talking cows. I mean, I absolutely love.
What kind of cows
spending
you
time.
have?
Sir,
That's
What kind of cows?
I have beef cattle, mostly Angus.
Yeah.
Got a few white ones here and there.
that's the most relaxing, clearing your head out, is go ride and look at the cows. Take the day, you got to drive 2 hours to where my ranch is, and go count calves, look at the cows, figure out how much grass you got, how much water we got, and take care of those animals.
Rotational grazing.
Yeah.
Doing all the right things for the grass and the soil to make sure they grow the grass, using chicken litter on my farm for fertilization, using comprehensive nutrient management plans that the county extension office helps.
You grow
me
your
do.
own hay?
Grow my own hay. You know, I mean, it's so rewarding, and probably the biggest benefit, asset of being a farmer is being to raise your children there. When my son went to war, his commanding officer wrote me a handwritten letter. And he says, when I started working your boy, I knew he was from the farm. And I wished I had a whole troop like him, because he had work ethic. Raising my children on the farm, making them understand how to take care of not just plants, but animals, and do it with all your heart, as though you were working for the Lord, not for the man. There's nothing more rewarding than that. But there's nothing more stressful and disappointing to go to the mailbox, pull out all the bills in your paycheck, and not have enough to pay the bills with after you put your heart and soul into it. And watch your heart break when your children can't come back and do it and make a living.
What are we going to
They
lose?
all would love to do it.
What are we going to lose if we lose our family farms? What's the biggest thing we're going to lose?
We're gonna lose a way of life that built this country, and the values that we learn of loving, caring, whether it's soil, people, animals, just good old living.
Yeah.
It's a way of life that can't be replaced.
It can't be replaced, and it's not matched anywhere else.
You can't buy it, you can't sell it. You can't replace it.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being here. I look forward to continuing working with all my fellow senators. If any additional senators have additional questions for the witnesses or statements to be added, the hearing record will be open until next Wednesday at 5 p.m. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank you for being here. This is I just think farming is just a really rewarding opportunity, way of life. So thanks for being here.